Okay, Bishop, let's go.
Roger.
I'm ready, man. Ready to get it on. Go!
Hello, hello. Welcome to the And Evil podcast. This is Chris Jantzen, and this is the And Evil podcast. Evil is the destruction of freedom. The And Evil podcast was dedicated to the book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. It's an excellent short book that will lead anybody down the path of just getting yourself started on understanding the basics of natural law and freedom. What else could be more important than freedom? You know, it's the answer to every question: freedom. So before I go on too much longer, I'm really excited about this episode. I bring in Brandon Martin back. We're going to talk about aliens, and I think we might even talk about Alien too, some of the other Alien movies. There's so much deep symbolism and esoteric truth in these movies that it's given us a good jumping off point to talk about freedom and natural law and first principles and everything we like to talk about, philosophy. Before we even get into that, though, I have another just quick special guest here with me today. We're streaming today on quite a few different platforms, and I have today with me James Cordner. He's helping restream the show for me, so I'm going to bring James in real quick to say hi. What's up, James? Thanks for coming.
Hey, Chris, what's going on, dude?
How you getting along?
I'm doing well, man. Yeah, I'm doing well.
Right
How are
on.
you? What's up, Brandon?
What's up, guys?
Thanks for coming, Brandon. Looks
Of
like you
course.
got your sound working.
Yeah, it should be working pretty good. Level's
Cool. I
Yeah,
made
this
a
is
little
pretty
mistake of
exciting.
sending you guys this link like last minute because I was like off in the weeds. I was finding clips for the Aliens movies. I was all excited about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I gotta invite my guests." So thanks for coming. I'll just hand the mic over to James Cordner real quick because he just wanted to let you in since you're so kind to help us restream today onto your platforms too. So why don't you just give a shout out to your work and Mr. Shattering the Illusion. Thanks for throwing that awesome event. I'm still excited coming off of that and the funnel too. So go ahead, James.
Oh, hey, yeah. Thanks for that. It was a great event. It turned out really well, and I'm just really thrilled to have done it, and to be able to host something like that is quite an accomplishment. And I couldn't have done it without the people that joined me and Joe during the day, the viewers, everything. It just a well-oiled machine. It all worked together very, very well. So I owe a lot to the people that were involved, backing me up. And that's all I got to say about Shattering the Illusion for now. And but also about these restream, using this software and helping each other out with backing each other up on these live streams that we do. It's a very nice thing to be doing. And my inspiration for wanting to do these types of things comes from Chris Janssen's presentation at Shattering the Illusion of the untapped power of teamwork. And this is just an extension of that, where we can network and we can take it upon ourselves and use the power that we have with our platforms and stuff like that to support other content creators. And it might not always be a Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth that shows up on these feeds. It might be End Evil. It might be Liebercast. It might be another endeavor from another content creator that is out there that's looking for a helping hand or a little bit of a push. And this is what we can do for each other, is to show support and to just be there and to, extend a helping hand. So I'm very happy to be able to do that this evening, and to be able to kind of be, from what I can tell, there's a few of us that seem to be on the cutting edge of this this idea that we're running with, because this isn't the first time that we've done this. Hey, Chris, we've been doing this for off and on a few weeks now, and
Yeah, with the Libercast and restreaming each other's work, and it's exciting because there's so much to be learned too about this new technology. And what's funny is that the sword cuts both ways, right? Like the
yeah.
technology is part of the subject that's really coming up for me, and what Brandon and I are going to talk about today with aliens, where it has its bad side to it, but it also has this side to it where if we use it like a tool, we can wield this weapon of reaching people and reaching more people and help us to understand how to get back to nature, as Will put it in his conference and shattering in his presentation and shattering the illusion. So thanks so much, James, for coming today. I'm going to go ahead and bring Martin in, and we got a lot to talk about. We've been looking forward to this discussion for weeks now. We got put off a couple weeks due to talk about tech issues, and and we had some personal stuff going on too. So this is a long-awaited discussion. We've given a lot of thought to it, and so we're really excited. James, real quick, plug your show and your podcast before I cut you out of the screen.
Okay, yeah. A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. That's a Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth, not to the truth, just to truth. It's very simple there on my shirt. And you can get your own shirt. Go to my website, freeyourmindne.com. Navigate that yourself, explore, have fun, and let me know what you think by tuning into the show each Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be going live this Saturday. My guest will be Melissa Arnautovic, if I'm pronouncing that last name correctly.
Melissa's
I hope
awesome.
I am. Yeah. And we're going to have an exciting conversation. And I got some pretty exciting announcements to make at the end of that show this coming week, if I can remember. So, yeah, please, if you're coming over to End Evil from a Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth feed, please go over to End Evil. Is it .com? I forget.
.life.
.life and follow Chris's work and follow Brandon's work too at S.E.E.D Truth Academy, and like figure out like how to follow these guys, because these are some top notch speakers, and you want to pay attention to what these guys have to say. So without any further ado, I'm going to peace out. Thank you for letting me do this. And
sure, thanks for your help and teamwork.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for listening to
Brandon. We gotta talk soon.
I know. Very soon. It's coming.
Yes.
Brandon's
things on the horizon.
Right now I'm super busy.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Oh man,
much love.
Appreciate much love to you guys too. Peace. Have fun.
All right, my man. All right, let's see if I can figure out how to get the screen switched over here. I'm gonna minimize my.
Nope.
Hey, nope.
Hey guys.
I'll get it.
Oh, man.
It's just a couple clicks, but you can go a lot of clicks in the wrong direction. I'll tell you that for sure.
Right, no doubt.
Well, I'll let you kick it off here, Brandon. I'm gonna go shut my door. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, I've been looking forward to getting back on here and talking about this amazing allegorical movie, Aliens, and like what Chris said, we might get into a couple other things and definitely try to dabble in the dark aspects of the programming and the social engineering that's going on within the Hollywood narratives that are out there. But also, I always like to cut through that and get down to the archetypal expressions and really understand, what can we learn from this, even though that it is that there are programs being, directed into our subconscious mind. How can we, the first thing is learning how to defend yourself against that, and then learning how to use these things to be able to enhance your consciousness and to see through the illusions that the elites and the social engineers and the controllers have, pulled over our eyes and programmed us with for, thousands of years, obviously. So I also don't think that movies themselves are just all negative. So, we have this idea that Hollywood is always just 100% negative. And I think that there's a mix between dark occultists and light occultists working within Hollywood. I don't think it's 100% controlled, though it is massively controlled. But there are, obviously light workers seated within these places that are trying to put out messages of truth as well. And it is true that, maybe you're a light worker and eventually you kind of get swept up into the flow of things being in Hollywood and becoming like a big time director, such as maybe like James Cameron the director of this film, Aliens, because he started out as a model builder and then he got into movie directing later on. And we can't really know what his intentions were, but we can see like how easy it is to get swept up into that when you're trying to do giant creative endeavors that get you affiliated with all kinds of institutions, that get you affiliated with the military, the CIA, to get these movies done, and where you have to compromise on certain things. So I mean,
Well, you
personally, I like.
definitely see like a high level of knowledge in this guy, like, and even
Mhm.
more as I watched since last we chatted, and I'm looking more at, like the things you brought up that I hadn't thought of before. And now I even saw a bunch more stuff, and I'm like, wow, he's purposefully putting in these same like little elements to this movie that are like foreshadowing and highlighting certain analogous or metaphorical truths, or what the thing that's been really coming to me is the transhumanism
Mhm.
agenda and the technotronic agenda, because the materialist agenda, especially thinking about Will Keller's discussion about animism, and you can see in these movies displayed this. Maybe he's just foreseeing this. Maybe he's preaching it. It's hard to say where these, like you're saying, directors, whether they're on the good side or the bad side of things. But we do know for sure that Hollywood has been long time inundated um, with this dark occultists. And where else are they going to, s- sprout their agenda? But in front of the large percentage of the population. So yeah, I sorry to interrupt you, but you got me excited there.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that, and it's very well spoken there and well said. Yeah, I think a lot of people stigmatize cinema too, and I think we need to be careful about that. It's just like people with the flat Earth community where they attack NASA solely. So we always hear the attack on Hollywood, which is a big issue, obviously. But then it gets lumped in with cinema itself. And if you study cinema itself, which is something that I'm really into, the history is extremely rich and it's a lot more diverse, and there's a lot more nuances to it than it just being one control apparatus. There's a lot more organic creativity when you look at the history. And there's a really good documentary that I've been watching that my uncle turned me on to. I think it's called um, a film story, or a film story, The Odyssey. I think that's what it's called. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. It's something story. I'm pretty sure it's maybe it's a cinema story, The Odyssey, but it's really really good, and it just shows how cinema has evolved in such a unique way across the world, and it goes from the Japanese evolution of cinema and how they dominated the markets into the Western Hollywood stuff where they started to take from the East, and then Japanese, like all their cinema fell off the top boards and everything. And then next thing you know, we have like this huge conglomerate of Hollywood, and that's the like dominant, cinematography out there, where we don't really see any kind of like alternative foreign movies anymore unless it's underground, like German movies, Russian movies, Japanese movies. And none of these movies do we see very much. It's all American Hollywood movies, and it doesn't mean that there aren't control systems over there either. It's just that we just happen to be the masters of those programs over here. We've dominated the world and the market with that, I should say. But yeah, with the transhuman agenda, I actually wanted to talk about that because
Hey,
James Cameron. Oh, go ahead,
let
go
me
ahead.
show
Yeah.
let me show a little something first, because this is something I just pulled out right before the show, and I think we're probably going to get into it anyway. And I noticed a particular detail that exists both in Alien One and in Alien Two, and I'm just going to play a quick little clip, and then I want you to go ahead with what you were saying. All right, let me see if
All
I can
righty.
get this full screen here. We talked about it a little bit last time, the opening scene.
Mm-hmm.
This was actually not the one I had intended to show, but oh yeah,
Mm.
it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, this
This
is a
is
good one.
kind of like when the Marines first awaken
Yeah.
on
Mhm.
the second Aliens movie. See right here how you see that they're showing the missiles, and then look at that machine that Ripley gets in later, sitting there with no person in it. And
Right,
this is
it's
the part that really tripped
foreshadowing.
me out. Look at that thing. That's a perpetual motion.
Right, right,
Okay, and what you got going on here is the same thing they showed in the beginning of Aliens One. The ship's all bare and blank, and the
right.
only thing running things is the computer, right?
Yep,
And then the
it's cold.
perpetual, those little perpetual, in the first one it was the little bird that goes forward and backward into a cup,
Yep.
and in this one it's that little spinning thing, and those are a really important symbol that I didn't catch until this time around,
Yeah,
because
that's very, very well said.
what it shows is that it's showing that the humans are being controlled by the robots. Look, the robot wakes up the humans,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here it starts printing out all their names. They're practically in a sleep. They might as well be dead. The machine is running the humans, not the other way around. And the
Absolutely.
perpetual motion machine is kind of like symbolizing this thing of, you know, this desire to go away from humanity in the creative impulse and to move to this mechanical sort of solution, right? And I don't know, that really tripped me out. And I just wanted to jump into, because what you were saying is, you know, there's two sides to the story, right? Like there are a lot of good things about technology, but the scary thing is, you know, like in the Terminator movies, when technology
Mm-hmm.
owns us, or the Matrix,
Right.
where, you know, we're in these boxes and you know, we're the servants of. The thing is that, like you were saying, cinema is a good thing because it's connected to art, and art comes from our generative force, the part of us that is growing. And that's kind of how I describe good versus evil. Good is growing, good is
Mhm.
generating, right? Evil is taken away from that force. And so what do you
Right.
see here is this juxtaposition between the cold, dead, frozen walls of the computers, which don't have soul or humanity, and yet it's raising us, you know, out of the dead.
Right.
It's trippy. Okay, so I
Yeah.
talked a lot. I'm gonna hand it
No, no,
over to
that was
you.
good. That was really, really good. I'm glad you brought that up. It's dead on, and it's exactly what we should be talking about, you know? It's the idea of when does, our creations surpass us and they start to dominate us, you know, and how far are we willing to take that, obviously, and how far are we willing to allow technology to run our lives? Because at some level you could really, I mean, we already kind of are there, which is a dystopian, you know, technocratic world where we're just kind of like in a cyberpunk uh you know, tyranny, where we're just completely ruled and controlled by mechanics and coldness. But yeah, we talked about the expression there, the cinema expression of like what he's trying to show is that, you know, not only space, it's cold, it's absence of, you know, life and things like this. Even though to me, I think of all planets as living things and all stars as living things, but when we see space, it's kind of like this empty, vast, cold, you know, just, you know, void, obviously. And that void can symbolize the absence of humanity, the absence of growth, just metaphorically. It doesn't mean it's actually that, but it just means that we associate that subconsciously to it. So he does a really good job with the camera angles and the camera expressions to show that. And this is the interesting thing you brought up, Terminator. This is actually what I wanted to say is that he was working on Terminator before this movie. James Cameron was, and then he got into this movie, and all the people working on the movie with him were aliens with James Cameron. They actually didn't like James Cameron, and so he sat them down and was like, hey, let's watch Terminator. This is the first movie. Terminator was his first movie that he actually made, and this is he worked on other movies, but that was his first, you know, huge director position where he made that movie. And he sat down and tried to have everybody watch the Terminator, and he's in Europe, and it's like completely different over there with the way that the cinema is filmed over there, and they weren't liking his American style or whatever, and nobody came to watch it to actually, you know, see that. But it's interesting because if you watch James Cameron's career, this is what I wanted to point out. He goes from this extreme mechanical, materialistic warnings of, and it still is that when he gets to the end of his career or his current career. But it's just like watch like the Terminator, then Aliens, and then you move through like Titanic, and then the next one you could look at Avatar, right? And as you move through this, he's going more into nature. He's going away from the mechanical, and then he's moving more in his directorial style into nature. But the weird thing about Avatar is that it's all done through cinematography. There's like no scenes in it that are actually natural. They're all artificial.
CGI, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all CGI, and it's like, you know, what's going on here? It's kind of interesting. So he has some kind of weird psychology going on with that, whether that's intentional or not. But we do see it in the movie too, because when Ripley wakes up in this movie, she goes to that room and there's like artificial nature in that room, right? She sits down, and I think it's in the director's cut or the extended version, and she sits down and she's talking about her daughter and looking at the pad about her daughter, Amanda Ripley. And she sits down in this room, and it's kind of like a recreational lounge or something. And then there's like nature in the background, but it's just projections on the spaceship. Because when you're on a spaceship, you're not going to get much nature there. I mean, you can have plants growing inside of it, but they don't even have that really. It's just all artificial images. So it's really interesting to see that,
Yeah, and he's always kind of making this comparison all throughout.
Hmm.
And I don't know, that really intrigued me this time because really that is a lot of the battle that we're facing. Because when you think about it, for these people who are trying to control the world, basically, these dark occultists, they have to have, you know, billions of people under their control, and they're only
Hmm.
0.0001% of the population or smaller, right? How do they do that? Well, the only realistic way they can do that without all out force, because they don't have enough people, is to control us, mechanically. And that's what's
Right.
happening, with the phones, with boxing us all off and fragmenting us from each other, separating us from our soul in so many ways by, getting us distracted by these screens. That's their method of doing that, of getting us into these. Think about this too. This movie is starting to show you the progression even of how they get us into the matrix, right? You get used to getting in these tubes where you get frozen, right? And they're even convincing people now that you can get a ship to another planet, right? And we're not even,
Right.
most of us can't even really prove that another planet exists in the way that we've been told.
Right.
It's like stuff we're making assumptions about, and they're yet convincing people that, oh yeah, we're gonna, if you pay us $1 billion right now, we're gonna put you in a ship and send you to Mars or whatever. It's like, wow.
Yeah, you may
As soon
never
as you
wake
do
up.
that, or you put on the 3D glasses and the 3D face thing,
Yep.
you're in the tube, man. All they got
Yep.
to do now is turn you
And
off.
put you in a laboratory. They'll just keep you here, put you in a laboratory, and then hook you up to a big quantum computer or whatever, you know,
Right.
and they'll make you think that you're actually going to space, obviously. But yeah, he does say it. He says it directly, and what else he brings to the table is he brings really good war allegories, right? Like this whole movie is about war. His subtitle for this movie is "It's War" in the previews. When they first
Right.
released
Right.
it, it's war. And his whole thing was that he was trying to make Alien, and Alien's a really good psychological thriller. I think it's one of the best psychological thrillers out there, and I'd love to really dig into that because it's even deeper in the symbolism of the archetypes than this one is. This one's really action based. This one's really about the war and the confrontation of, like I said before, like trauma and the confrontation of the inner self. And this is what I wanted to bring up. I want to bring up a little bit of esoteric knowledge here about these movies is that you can look at it this way. The first movie is the Entered Apprentice of Freemasonry. The second movie is The Fellowcraft, and then the third movie is The Master Mason. And it's very interesting because this movie is all about facing your inner demons, the evil within. So it's about getting into the hive. It's going into the temple, but it's the dark temple. And you have to go within to conquer the dark care, which is represented by the queen at the end, the dark care that perverts us from within. This kind of parasitical beast, this evil within all of us that has you know led us to moral relativism. So it's the dark mother aspect archetypally, and it has to be conquered by the authentic female who's Ripley, who's Commander Ripley. And well, she's not a commander, but she's the authentic mother figure in this who takes up the sacred feminine principle,
Well,
and
she
she's
was the
true
second in
care.
charge in Alien, right?
Right, right. Yeah, she was the second in charge in Alien. Yep. So I think that's really important to understand. And in this movie, we also see the 3 degrees as well, because we start off where we end up where we started out at. So what I mean is it's like an Ouroboros. So they start out on this ship, the Sulaco, right? And and then they end up back in space, in these tubes at the end. They end up back in cryogenic chambers, and that cryogenic chamber can represent the coffin of Hiram Habib in Freemasonry, the third degree of Freemasonry, which is about resurrection and sleep. So we see this motif in a lot of movies where we have the being awakening out of sleep, right? Like Neo awakening out of his slumber, or Alice, awakening out of his slumber. We see this all over the place. So it's the same thing, and then she represents obviously Snow White. She's even called Snow White in the film by Vasquez. So that's a really big understanding that she's supposed to be like this fragile, thing, and then what really happens is
Oh,
she
sorry.
no, you're good,
Um,
you're good. I was like, I
this
know
is
that sound.
yeah. I wanted to show this because you're like hitting right on it right now. But I was hoping to just bring it up like carefully, but I'm just so shitty at running
Oh, it's
Restream.
okay. You're doing better than I would with it right now. I still haven't learned all this stuff.
But here's the awakening scene, right? Let me
Right,
see. I
right.
want to make it to where I can see you here too, but it just doesn't want to do it for me. Get
Oh,
you
it's all right.
on, and then I'll get the. Oh well, I
Yeah, it's
tried.
all right. Yeah, so she's waking up out of the coffin, and
There we
where
go.
does Snow White end up, you know? Or Sleeping Beauty, right? She's the Sleeping Beauty, you know? And Sleeping Beauty ends up in the coffin and has to be woken up. And this is kind of what's going on here, is that she's coming out of that slumber, out of that unconscious realm into the conscious world, and then she has to face the reality of the evil. But what we can really look at this as is our internal aspects. These are all archetypal images of ourselves. Each character here represents a person or a personality of ourselves, or an aspect of our personality, our collective personality. So I think that's really important to really, comprehend all that. And I have some notes here on that. I wanted to bring up one more thing about the Sulaco, which I think is really, really important. A lot of people will not know this, but the ship is the Sulaco Nostromo, and it's actually from an old book, and that book was A Tale of the Seaboard, which is a 1904 novel by Joseph Conrad. Now, Joseph Conrad has written a lot of books like The Heart of Darkness, which is a must read if you have not read it, which inspired films like Apocalypse Now. And it's set in like South Africa, and the Sulaco, and in this book, the Nostromo and the Sulaco are represented as the same thing, just as different stories and different motifs. So in the essence, it's about this nefarious business entity, right? And we have this huge anti-corporate theme that's going on in this movie, because we have Wayland Yutani, who's the corporation, this pinnacle of crony capitalism that's running all of this stuff. And you have the character Burke, who's coming in to work for the company, and he's called the company man. And we have this idea of the company man who's always out there, who's trying to swindle everything and trying to make his way to the top through the social Darwinian hierarchy. And what happens is that he ends up trying to impregnate Newt and Ripley in this film, uh, you know subversively and covertly, with the face huggers, obviously, to sneak back this evil back into the place, into the corporation, for the corporation, so they can make bioweapons. And this actually happens in our real life all the time. This is what really happens, and this is how seeds of evil get planted everywhere. Is through that kind of mindset. The thing about Burke is that he actually is more evil than the alien. And that's what James Cameron's trying to show you, is that the human being who is willing to do that, who's willing to abandon his moral compass, is actually more devastating than the alien itself, you know? And I really appreciated the scene where he gets eaten, killed by the alien, because it's the evil that eats the evil. It's the most ruthless predator coming after another predator, right? And it's that social Darwinian thing going on, where who's ever the most ruthless is going to survive. And he's actually a big coward, so you see that, but he's actually more evil than the creature itself, because the creature itself is just going off of its instincts. That's just what it's supposed to do. It's just trying to breed and reproduce. If you look at it just like some other creature in the animal kingdom, it's just doing what it naturally does, not like esoterically, just exoterically. But he's not doing what he's naturally supposed to be doing. He's naturally supposed to be a moral being, obviously, so he's actually more evil than the creature itself exoterically. So I really enjoyed that whole thing about that.
I wanted to last time when we were talking, one of the most important scenes I think in the Aliens movie is and I wasn't able to get this clip, but the scene where Ripley lays down with Newt and they're laying
Yes.
down in the bed and she sleeps in that chamber with them, and that's when Burke seals them in there with a couple of the facehuggers to impregnate them.
Yep.
He's got this secret plan to bring them back. And when everybody realizes that, they're ready, I forgot if it was Hudson or Hicks, they're ready to just kill him. They're like, the
Yeah.
heck with this guy, let's take him out,
Yeah, they're ready.
like you're saying, he's worse than the aliens because, they're just trying to survive and do their thing. But he actually, thought that out, premeditated. Oh, I'm gonna actually put these face huggers on these people so I can freeze them, bring them back home, so my military can use them. I can get paid, and my military can use them as a weapon against other people. I mean, that is really sinister. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing that happens in Alien One movie when Ripley gets into it with. She doesn't realize that he's a synthetic human at first.
Mhm.
The science officer, I'm blanking on his name right now, but and he tries to basically rape her by sticking this he could have just killed her. He's got his hands, he's super strong, but instead he tries to stick this newspaper into
Yep.
her mouth, which is like a rape scene. And it's kind of the same thing in the scene with Ripley and Newt in this room, and here comes this evil thing that's going to basically try to rape them. It's
Yep.
just like, can you imagine what people go through who have been abused sexually? And that's one of the main ways that these evildoers have propagated their evil on the world, is by raping people, both
Yep.
physically, spiritually, and mentally. But their physical rape of people is part of their mind control technique. It's part of their way of keeping their criminal cabal in place. It's one of the poisons they use to keep people in a state of trauma. And I've seen it over and over. People don't realize how many young people are raped, even ritually raped. And
Yes.
and this movie is kind of pointing a hint at that. Like, I think he knew about it. I think he's definitely kind of letting you know there. He's showing a scene of this woman trying to protect her daughter, and she kind of can't, because this evil that's coming is so scary. There's very little they can do it. They're almost defenseless. And it
Right.
turns out it's Burke who's the symbol of these plotting, planning people that aren't just doing it for pleasure. They're doing it for even worse purposes, even worse than the aliens, like you're saying. So the evil is
Absolutely.
inside, and then it propagates. And just like that, people that have been raped or that have been sexually molested, they tend to do it to the next generation of people. It tends to be a cyclical thing where it happens over and over. And it's just like the alien getting inside of you, coming out, and then you sick it on the next person.
That's right. You nailed that. Yeah, I love that scene, and the other thing about that scene is that she has to ask for help from the sacred masculine principles in that scene to actually save the child, because first she sees the gun, which Burke takes out of the room, and then she has to light the lighter and set off the fire alarm. And water can symbolize the feminine energy, obviously, but it's mainly about setting the alert. And then the Marines come in, and Hicks is the one who saves her, obviously, and then Hudson saves the daughter, or the young girl, Newt, obviously. But there's something else. I have notes here from my essay about that scene as well, and one of the things I really liked about that scene is that Newt, it's right around this time, but when they're laying together, and Ripley goes to put Newt to sleep, she has a little baby doll in her hand, right? She has this little baby doll head in her hand, and Newt is like, questioning, like she's gonna have nightmares because of all this, right? She asks her about the nightmares, and then Ripley is like, well, look, does whatever she said some name like Susie or something like that. Does Susie have nightmares? Let's look in here. And she looks inside the baby doll, this plastic baby doll. And she's like, nope, there's nothing in there. And then Newt's just like, well, of course, she doesn't have dreams. She's made of plastic, right? And she just calls her out on it, like full on. And the cool thing about Ripley, she's like, yep, she's just humble about it. Like, yep, you're right. I was trying to comfort you with a white lie, and obviously that's not going to work with you. So it's this idea of how we try to comfort children with white lies, but I think it's also interesting because it ties into the artifice of things as well, because that it represents the human that's empty. The doll represents just an empty shell, and she's like, I'm not an empty shell. I'm an actual living being that is dealing with trauma here, and I have to
Right,
have
and
the truth.
that same symbol shows up too, like in the beginning of the films. Both of the beginning of the films do this, where I was
Mhm.
talking about, they pan around the cold, icy room,
Right.
and it ends up on this helmet that's
Yep.
sitting there, and it's got this emergency thing, and you can see the letters printing out, which strangely enough go from blue to red depending on the moment which it shows, which I think is also significant. But the empty helmet is like, you think it's going to be a person or a creature or something, because this is a scary movie, but it's like symbolizing this shell, that where the humanity's not there. And then they're always coming forward, like I talked last time about when the business people were questioning Ripley, like, you blew up this machine that was worth, our spaceship was worth all these billions of dollars, and they're not that concerned with, I said 12, but it was 7 crew members. They don't care that much about those. Well, the same
Mhm.
thing happens in the beginning of Aliens, when the guys find her. She's been floating in space for, I forgot what, 57 years, right?
57 years, yeah.
I think probably a significant number too.
It is,
and
it's
and
12.
they,
It's solar, so
5 and
it's
7,
12.
12, right?
Yeah.
Solar, right? So then they come in with that phallic little device,
Yep.
right? Like you talked about, it totally looks penis, and I actually have that
Yep.
clip we could look at. And then the guy comes in finally, and they realize that she's alive. The vital signs are good, and they're like, oh, so much for our salvage.
Right, right,
Again,
right.
it's this same juxtaposition of human life being less important than money, or
Yep.
human life
You
being
nailed it.
less important than the future of this weapon or this tool that they're trying to get a hold of.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of what James Cameron points out the entire like his entire career, because if you look at Avatar too, I mean that's the whole idea of Avatar, is like that life is less important than terraforming and materialistic conquest, So I think he really does have a good understanding of this, and he really is trying to put a message out with that, to either try to program us so that we don't fight against it, because we know if we see it constantly like this, then we just accept it in our own world as normal. If we continue to see this, repetitively over and over and over and over, then it just becomes a normal thing to us. Or he's intentionally trying to like warn us about these things. So it's a difficult thing. One other thing I'd like to bring up too is that we were talking about the military aspects, because there's a lot of military stuff in this movie. The reason why I liked it a lot when I was a kid was because of the action in it. The first movie scared the shit out of me. I was terrified of the first movie, but this movie I wasn't as scared because I felt more empowered. And I think I felt less vulnerable with this movie because Ripley represents such a strong masculine mother figure. And yeah, this scene here, this is really good. The first ship represents the phallic, and then you have the space helmet like you're talking about, and you got the computer scenes that come on, and the computer data that comes onto it, and it also looks like the universe as well. It can represent the womb or the universe. So there's archetypal symbols there, so we can look at it from a point of view of like, what are they intentionally putting there to program us with, or we can look at it archetypally, like what else can we pull out of that as well. So, and then yeah, this is the circle
Like
ship
we talked
above is
about
the
the
feminine.
docking, right?
Yep, the docking and the sacred feminine and sacred masculine coming together, you know, and you'll find that throughout this entire film. Um, but one thing I wanted to mention was the military gear that they bring in, right? The smart gun. We have the first smart gun, which is like Vasquez has this giant gun, where they used this camera harness actually to mount a real M60 on them, and they had trouble using this gun. But they were real guns, and but there was supposed to be a smart gun because they lock. You know, they have these wireless technology with them, and you can't use them at certain phases. So they automatically lock or unlock and things like this. So they actually called them smart guns. So that's, you know, that's some foreshadowing for future smart guns, obviously, that we are coming into contact with right now. And then another thing about the military stuff, I think this is really important symbolism. Now, it wasn't exactly intentionally done, but it was done under the idea of the Vietnam War and what the soldiers did in the Vietnam War, which is that James Cameron came into the actors one day, and they were all getting dressed with their armors. And he said, "Okay, now I want all you guys to personalize your armor." And everybody's like, "What? You know, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Personalize your armor. Put your own character on your armor, you know, put your own art on your armor or whatever." And what that represents is the Vietnam War, when all the soldiers were personalizing all the military gear, where you see them writing profanity on the planes and on the bombs that they're dropping on the Vietnamese, and you know, and all this stuff, right? And obviously you'll get court-martialed for doing that now, but in you know, in Vietnam, that was a big thing. If you look at all the films, you talk to any of the soldiers and stuff, and what happens is, if you look at some of the personalized gear, the one I want to focus on, some of them are really profound, but the one I really want to focus on is on Commander Hicks, and it's the heart with the lock on it, right? It's a heart. Well, it's a heart with the lock over top of it. I don't know if you have that saved for you, but
I did manage to find, you know, you were talking about
there's
the guns.
yeah, there's the smart gun with the camera harness, you know. And I can say one more thing about Vasquez here, is that she actually is an inspiration to Ripley throughout this, because she represents that masculine, you know, dominant energy, and she
In the
makes fun
beginning,
of Ripley.
she's doing the
Yep,
pull-ups right when
yep,
they get
she's
out of the
doing the
thing,
pull-ups.
and
Yep,
Ripley walks by, and she's like, "Yeah," they're
yep,
talking about being a male or female, and
yep,
Drake is kind of joking with her. "Yeah, it's too bad you are female," you know, and she's like, "Oh
yeah,
fuck,"
yeah.
you know, I can't remember
Are
exactly how she
you ever get confused for being a man, is what
right,
Henderson
right.
or Hicks says, or somebody says to him. But she's like, "No, have you?" And it's like some
So you can
transgender
kind of
stuff.
see what you're talking about. Some of the writing on there.
Hmm.
Yeah, but you're right. No, have you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so funny. Hudson, that's the one who said it. But yeah, the lock with the heart, and it's really important because at the end of the movie, what happens is that Ripley has to rip off the armor that Hicks has, and she
Because
has
he's
to
getting burned by the
unlock.
acid,
Right,
right?
he gets burned by the acid in the elevator, and so she has to rip off the armor to save him. And what that means is that he, at that point, they're actually unifying alchemically, because she's unlocking his heart. His heart has been locked away. That's what that represents. You know, his care has been locked away, and then she unlocks that for him, you know. And then
I
he
hadn't caught
also
that.
loses an eye too with the acid. So he goes to one eye. So he has the one eye, you know, symbolism going on at that point, which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, he Michael Biehn actually wasn't the character. He's the actor. He wasn't the first guy who was supposed to play that. I can't remember the actor who originally was supposed to play it, but he had some drug addiction. I know that, so he couldn't actually play the character. And some of the scenes are actually recorded with him, who was a different actor. And Michael Biehn comes from Terminator. He was the main character in Terminator, the main protagonist. I can't remember his name now.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the same actor.
I'm no good with actor names, but I know who
Yeah,
you're
me
talking
neither.
about.
Right. Um, Reese, that's his name. Michael Biehn played Reese in Terminator 1. So, and I like what Fred said here, xenomorphs, xenophobia. I've thought about that as well. And that's definitely kind of what I talked about last time, which is like, you do have that kind of correlation between the aliens and, you know, other ethnicities. Okay. Because the whole idea of the military, the Marines coming in, having superior firepower is just like Vietnam, you know. going in, and they have superior firepower against the Vietnamese, and yet the Vietnamese struggled so hard against them, right? And they did crazy guerrilla warfare. So it's like the military thinks that they have it all under control, and then when it comes down to it, they really don't. And then who actually comes in and saves the day is Ripley, an independent individual, the person who doesn't have military training. And what does she do? She has ingenuity. She takes a freaking pulse rifle, straps it to a freaking, a flamethrower, and goes down and faces the queen. And that's all about rubedo and alchemy, because it's all about the burning, because rubedo means the red and it's the final face. So when she goes to face the queen down in the hive and she burns all the eggs and, shoots the grenades into the queen's sacks and stuff, it's all rubedo, because it's her coming out of the phoenix. It's the phoenix fire, and she rises up out of this layer like a phoenix out of the fire, and then there's this nuclear explosion from the fusion reactor. And that's another military thing that they bring in, which is the nuclear threat. So he just layers this,
Well,
he
not
just
only that,
layers
but
all
from
that.
the beginning, the whole idea is this planet they're going to, LB-246, is it?
Yeah.
Was intended to be, what do they call it? They're trying to create a planet.
Terraforming.
Terraforming.
Right.
There you go. My brain blanked
Yeah.
out right there. But I mean, that's like kind of one of the most wild imagination
Mhm.
things of the sci-fi and the technological mind, is that our Earth gets so screwed up, or it's uninhabitable, or there's so many people that now we have to go to another planet and we have to learn how to inhabit these other planets, which involves turning it with technology from a rock into something that has life in it. Which again,
Right.
this is this same comparison, which is like it's showing you the wrong way to connect with nature, that you need to fly
Absolutely.
through empty space all by yourself, frozen like a dead body, to start a new life on a distant planet where we have nature and life right here. Like you were saying, the
Right.
fake, you're always showing the fakeness versus the realness.
Right, right. What got me thinking actually is that it always leads to suffering, right? It's always leading to suffering. This whole movie is about suffering, all of them are. And and it's kind of like you went too far into controlling these things to the extent that they now control you. Now they're controlling you and you're just in complete suffering from it. You're completely locked down. You get woken up by a computer, and then you go and fight this crazy alien being that, can probably rip you in half in
The
in a second. So
Hudson, I think, when I was watching clips and preparing for this discussion, I kept coming up with all these great clips from Hudson. He's kind of
he's
one of my
great.
favorite characters. But when you think about what he's symbolizing, is like, just sort of like the average person that gets duped by all this stuff, right?
Right.
Like
Yep.
he has a pretty pure heart, through most of it. He's trying to be like, here's this little clip of him in the beginning where he's just like you're saying, he's talking about the guns and everything, right? And he's giving this little speech to everybody,
Don't
right?
worry. Me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you.
Yep. Yep.
Check
You
it
can
out.
see his skull and bones on his
Independently
chest
targeting
there.
particle beam failings.
What I was talking about.
Try half a city with this puppy. We got tactical smart missiles, phase plasma pulse rifles, RPGs. We got sonic, electronic, ball breakers. We got nukes. We got knives, sharp sticks.
Knock it off, Hudson.
Not
So,
working
Yeah.
out with me.
It's just perfect because he's
Check
trying to
it
say,
out.
Yeah,
we're so
he's
tough.
great.
We got all these weapons,
Yep.
and it's just like the people we talk to are like, oh, we could solve all these problems with technology, or we could solve these problems. We just need to vote right. It's
Yep.
like the whole idea, and I've been trying to point this out too, is like even the idea of writing down laws is kind of going against nature in a lot of ways, because natural law is something that's inherent. It's the natural growth process, and everything needs to be decided and discovered on its own merit. Each situation's different because we're living beings. And then when people try to codify things into these laws, it's like turning into this mechanical function. Like you could write this thing on paper and it's going to apply to every situation, which is a
Right.
slap in the face to nature. It's this same idea of saying, oh, we're going to go there with all these guns and we'll just take over whatever planet it is. We don't, and he doesn't even know what he has to deal with yet. And he's so overconfident. And that's the way people are with these governmental structures we have, and these educational structures and these medical structures, where they're just so convinced, oh yeah, we got doctors, we got lawyers, we got courts, we got laws. We don't need to have a conscience. That's
Right.
really
Yeah.
ultimately what it's saying. We don't need to think for ourselves and connect within our own heart to our creation aspect of ourselves. We can just survive on all this technology, and that's
Yep.
the thing that's screwing us up. It's really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I agree with you. And Hudson there, he's one of my favorite characters actually because he's just so funny and he's just the arrogant, bravado that he has going on, and it does epitomize like what James is trying to satire about the military. He's trying to say like, hey, look, the military, they're idiots. These Marines, they're actually idiots. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Just like with Gorman, Gorman is a great representation of that inauthentic masculine figure, though he has a good redemption arc, because he ends up redeeming himself afterwards by sacrificing himself with Vasquez in the ventilation to save, Newt and Hicks and the rest of the crew, and he goes back for Vasquez is what he does. And then they set off the grenade to block off the aliens coming in. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I mean the transhumanism agenda is a big issue that we fundamentally and philosophically are going to have to deal with because like for me, yes, the idea of what I would consider to be the control of the higher mysteries, and what I mean the higher mysteries is that it's the idea of controlling the materialistic plane, the elemental powers of materialism, which creates these technologies, and until we get principles first, until we get principles, under our belt, until we understand morality, objective morality, correctly, then all these things are just going to be used in perversion. They're just going to be used for the slave system itself. So I don't think technology is ever going to go away. I think it's always going to be around. I think we have a natural, instinctive thing to create, to be, we have ingenuity at such a level that we'll always be creating new things. So yeah, Gorman, he's such a coward in this scene, and she just comes in and she just shows him, she has no military training. She just takes over immediately. And this is when you really see Ripley like actually step up and confront her trauma a bit, because then she takes over the tank thing and drives in there to rescue the people while he's in shock, while he's in fear. See, she's acting out of love and he's acting out of fear is how I would put that.
Yeah,
And
look, they really purposefully show, look, his eyes are darting around, he's sweating, he's like repeating himself. I told you guys to lay down in a fire and retreat by the numbers,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, like a
he doesn't
robot.
know
He's
what to
acting
do.
like a
He's
robot
frozen,
too.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's frozen and he's just acting like a computer, like follow this order, follow this order, So, and and of course that's not how it goes in war, war, that's not how it goes. Obviously, it's not how it goes anywhere. So, this movie can be looked at as the war on consciousness too, because we can, like I said, we can look at it as a mind. The whole movie is just a mind, and then everything in here is just the war taking place within the mind itself, and the struggle between the aspects that are positive, that are trying to stimulate evolution, compared to the aspects that are trying to destroy and create that entropy, right? The devolution of ourselves. So you can look at it all as all the programs that we've been programmed with. Like I was talking about earlier. Yeah, this movie is so good. There's just no doubt about it. And I mean, I highly recommend people to study film once they're ready for it, because you'll find so much stuff in film once you really can handle it. You need to be able to handle it though. You don't want to just start chronically watching movies all day long, every single day, obviously. But if you're into mythology, the hero myths, if you're into archetypal psychology and stuff like that, you can get a lot from it. And cinema itself is one of our highest forms of communication, besides the natural forms, which are like maybe telepathy or empathy and things like this. There's other forms of communication that we have naturally, but cinema is the highest form of technological communication that we have, because it incorporates sound, color, sight,
like
everything.
almost all the senses at
Yeah,
once.
almost all the
And
senses at once. Yep.
one thing that occurred to me psychologically is, throughout my life, I remember watching Aliens when I was a pretty young boy, and I was pretty excited about all those weapons, right? And there were a lot of other movies, like I was really into GI Joe, you know, cartoons and the
Mhm.
comic books as well. And it
Right.
got me excited about this whole idea of military, like you're saying. They kept
Yep.
introducing it as like the heroic people were always like military guys. And so, like, I was almost duped by it. Like, I was kind of starting to think, yeah, maybe I should go to the Air Force, And it wasn't until my sister sat me aside and started explaining to me, like, about pacifism, which I don't really like that ideology completely now, but lucky she did, because it talked me completely out of the idea of military. I started really thinking about what she was saying. Like, yeah, we don't want to sign up to go hurt people. That's crazy, and so it does stick with you, and I think you're right. Like, most people don't realize most of these movies do have like FBI or a CIA, some kind of
Mhm.
military consultant that makes certain decisions. They say, oh, okay, we'll let you use some of these props, and we'll let
Yep.
you, and some of the things we know about our military, but here's the trade: we get to make certain edits or decisions about your movie. So I mean, that stuff really does get in there, and the other scene I kind of wanted to bring up that I thought was a big deal was, what I call the drop scene.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
good one.
did I bring up the right one here? Where,
Mhm.
yeah, here it is. They're getting ready to go. Here, I'll even play the sound, because this part,
Picking up some hull ionization.
I don't know, it really sticks out to me symbolically.
Rough air ahead. We're in for some chops.
Some setup for the Gorman scene. Because you're asking, how many times have you done this?
Right, right.
How many drops is this for you, Lieutenant?
Yeah, she's way more calm and collected than he is.
Simulated.
How many combat drops?
2. Including this one.
Yeah, that breeds some trust for you.
Right? Even Burke.
Right. Hey, he's just sleeping.
Range 014.
I got a bad feeling about this drop. You always say that. You got a bad feeling
Right,
about this
right.
drop.
I want to
But
mention something here before we continue. Jonathan over here mentioned Rob Ager's site, and actually, I've watched and I've bought every single film from Rob Ager, and that's collaborative learning. The site, and he does a really great breakdown of all this stuff. Actually, a lot of the things that I've learned about aliens was from his work, and he's an amazing person who breaks down films and cinema and even video games actually as well. And then Fred, he brought up that Ripley uses both masculine and feminine. Yeah, she does. She starts out in the film as a submissive, traumatized victim of her past experience. And what this film is really about for her personal journey, which represents all of our personal journey, is conquering trauma. The trauma of facing such evil and what you do after that when you have to face it again, and you can't be crippled by it. After you've got out of a war, when you go into another war, what happens? Are you gonna? Because a lot of people, after they go through crazy traumatic events, they will put up these barriers in their mind, and they'll never they won't have the courage to do it again. They don't have the willpower to go through that again because it's completely horrific. It's absolutely
and there's
crippling.
a
And she,
hardening or
yeah,
breaking of the spirit, and that's interesting what Jonathan said too there about, sometimes soldiers sleep or take power naps. But I thought,
hmm
it was interesting. They had Hudson, who's kind of this sort of younger, a little bit more emotional and less prepared for the heat of battle, where you have Hicks. He's kind of the more experienced guy, and it's like that's why I like that drop scene so much, because here Hicks is sleeping through it. He's been through a lot of these, and then they're
yep,
kind of juxtapositioning that with Gorman, who's never even really been on a drop before. This is his first drop, besides simulations, and they're showing you that. And the drop is also symbolic of what does that happen to us in life? We get dropped into this madness, right? The same thing that happens to kids when they get dropped into these families that abuse them, right? This
Yes.
drop symbolizes, like, and it's kind of like there's this level of commitment. If you leave the main ship and you're going to go down to the planet, you got to go through the drop. And it's kind of a big symbolic deal. Like you're going in there, this is serious now. And think about what happens to people when they join like the military or they join the police. It's a lot
Right.
like that. And you have to become hardened, and you have to lose an aspect of your soul, the soul dire, in order to make that level of commitment. And then once you do, you're owned. You're out there all by yourself. You lose your ship, you lose your walkie-talkie, it's over. That's about it.
Yeah. Yep. You nailed it. Absolutely. Let me look at my notes real quick because I know I have a few more things I wanted to say about it. Um, I really think that a lot of people overlook the fact that it's a matriarchy as well. You can look at it as this matriarchal thing, and I know I brought that up last time. But the idea of the sacred feminine mother fighting the matriarchy, right? And that is something that's really important because an awakened female moves mountains. A truly awakened female can be extremely powerful, and we don't see enough awakened females. That's why they target females in the world. And actually, this movie led to a lot of movies taking up the role for more female protagonists because before this movie, you see more victim female movies where they don't really do anything. They're just the victim that gets chased down by the serial killer or the monster or whatever. And this movie kind of really changed all that, where we started to see more females being brought to the forefront. And actually, it took it to the extreme where now we see things like Wonder Woman and all these other crazy movies that are really unrealistic, and they've taken it so far that it's done an injustice to this movie, where you have these really fake protagonist female characters that are not really inspiring as a hero archetype or a heroine archetype, and compared to Ripley's heroine archetype.
But even another level, I noticed in something you said earlier. Yeah, Fred, Sigourney
Yeah,
Weaver, she is the shit. Yeah,
she is,
we were
man.
all three of us were probably in love with her at a certain age.
Yeah,
But
right.
look at this scene, and there's a couple scenes in this movie that really stick out. I didn't get the one I would have really liked, where Hudson's really kind of like losing it, and he's just really upset. And then someone points out, "Look at this little girl." Oh, it was Ripley. She
Mm,
points out, "Look at
yeah.
this little girl. She survived here all alone by herself, for a long time. She didn't have any guns or weapons." And also you notice in that scene when Ripley's driving the tank, Newt takes her seatbelt off and she goes and hides. She does it her way. It's like she's got this
Yep.
nature-based inherent innocence and instinct. Okay, and I think that's what they're showing us here. And look at this scene when they're right now getting prepared to fly back to the ship, and they're getting what's her name to go grab their little ship. She starts flying over, right? But then the alien gets her, right?
Yeah.
Higher.
The alien here, she goes.
God damn it.
Oh, I have something
And
to
it's
say about.
interesting too that she's a female with kind of a really short hair. And in the original movie, the pilot was very similar looking. Again, like a female, a strong female, piloting the ship with this really short hair, right?
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the hair. Actually, I have that in my notes.
You noticed that too, yeah.
Yeah, I
But,
have the hair symbolism in my notes. That's so cool you brought that up.
that's so cool, man, that we're starting to see some of the same things. But what I'm really trying to get at here, let me fast forward a little bit here. Here he goes. Yeah, here's.
That's just fucking great, man. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? There's some real pretty shit now, man.
You see the spit flying out of his mouth. But what Newt says is what really inspiring here, right?
Right. Yeah, this is a good scene.
I guess we're not going to be leaving now, right?
I'm sorry, Newt.
You don't have to be sorry. It wasn't your fault.
That's it, man. Game
Yeah, she's
over,
more
man.
mature
Game
than
over.
than all of
And the
them.
Marines. Yep.
Even Ripley,
Yep.
and more than once in the movie. Like you said with the doll, that's what you said earlier.
We
Yep.
better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
So that part, what I thought, I really wanted to show because everybody else is freaking out, in their own
Yep.
way. Hudson is kind of the one that always is the most dramatic, but all of them are going through it. They're like, shit, that was our ride home, and it just blew up. And she's the first one to realize the situation. Look, guys, it's starting to get dark.
Yep.
Aliens mostly come out at night. And it's like, that's the innocence. And it's coming from the female voice too, but also from the child, which is, I think,
Yeah, I was gonna
another
say
really
that.
important aspect of the situation. So I'll let
Yeah,
you
the
comment on
child brings the true wisdom to the table, you know, and she brings balance to the table. So I think that's really important. I'm glad you brought that scene up. I always liked her as the actress that played in that too. You know, she did a really good job, and they randomly selected her because they were filming in Europe, and they couldn't. They wanted a child with an American accent, and they couldn't find any, so they had to go to these certain schools or something to find her, and then randomly they just came about her, which was really awesome. But I wanted to correct myself earlier. I said that Terminator was James Cameron's first movie. That was his first like big directorial movie. His first movie was actually Piranha 2, and he made Piranha 2 kind of mimicking Jaws, and then he wrote this script called Mother, which correlates to Alien, actually, because you have Mother being the main AI system on the spaceship, and so that's a big symbolic part of it. And then what do we have in this movie? We have this like dark mother aspect going on, and then we have the authentic mother aspect going on. So he wrapped this script up within another script that they gave him to make this film, actually. And a lot of the things and a lot of themes from his original script and Mother actually play out in this film. So I thought that was kind of interesting that there was a synchronicity between the mother of Alien One and then the mother of Aliens as well, and then him writing the script Mother and it being put out there like that. And he
And
was
then it
really
gets really weird in Alien Resurrection, where
oh god, yeah.
talk about the
There's a
mother
lot of
thing,
Christian,
and
yeah, there's a
Alien
lot of
3
Christian
too.
themes.
Right.
Yeah,
Whoa.
there's a lot of Christian themes and Alien
She
3
becomes
specifically.
like the mother of the aliens, right?
Yeah. Yep, yeah, she's
Yeah.
impregnated in Alien 3, and then she sacrifices herself, and when she sacrifices herself at the end, she takes the Jesus archetype pose,
The
and
cross, right?
falls.
Falling
Yeah,
into
the
the pit,
cross.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's really crazy, and then in the next one, Resurrections, she becomes the mother, and she's like a clone, and then she, like, mates with the freaking queen or whatever down in there, and it's wild. That one's
Oh
really
yeah, there's
wild,
this weird sexual thing going on in that scene when
Yeah.
she's just like basically making out with
Yeah.
the alien. It's like now she's been impregnated and she's been copied and duplicated, frozen and
Mhm.
unfrozen. It's just like, isn't this all kind of like also foreshadowing the actual things they're trying to do in reality
Mhm.
with cloning people, freezing your cutting out, what is it, the base of your spine, and getting your DNA and cloning it and duplicating and starting to convince people it's okay to do that. Oh, we can clone your pet, next thing you
Oh,
know, we
yeah.
can put a chip in your pet. And then, the tiptoe,
Yeah.
what Ike calls, the totalitarian tiptoe, right? They're
Oh, yep.
getting us closer and closer to be merged with machines. And then in this movie shows with Ripley, with when she's in the loader, right? And she's driving this machine where she's now merged with this machine, and that's the only way she can fight this alien. And that's like the same trick they're trying to pull on us with the technotronic agenda and the materialistic agenda, that the only way we can change things or make things better is with technology. And it's
Right.
like weird that this is so embedded in here. Now, did the director know all that, or is he just sensing it, or the writer? I mean, I don't know exactly how this stuff all comes through. I'm not trying to say it's all 100% planned. Some of this stuff is synchromysticism. Some
Yep.
of it just, it's going to naturally flow out because it's the reality of the situation we're in. We're anybody who's aware, who's working on art, is going to express this recognition and realization of what's happening. And what's happening is humans are becoming merged with machines, and they're becoming cyborgs. And a lot of people, what's weird, I've noticed this, a lot of people already are, and they don't even know it. Like, think about people that are on a dialysis machine, for instance, or you have a pacemaker in your body. And a lot of people will justify these things, but I'm really questionable about whether we should be mixing our human nature with technology, because it's a slippery slope. It's
It
a
is a
slippery
slippery
slope.
slope, that's for sure. Um, that's the thing. I've had to struggle with this a lot myself, and it's like, do the benefits outweigh the risk is the question there, I personally don't fear technology to that degree. I think what I fear the most is just the human ignorance and human inability to really, understand how to properly use technology, because we went so far astray from nature in itself. I think if we truly want to use these things, technology should always mimic nature in itself. It should be a mimicking of nature, and what it should do is it should enhance nature. Because we're stewarders here. We're here to help steward this realm. We're here to help make this realm even better than what it is. And I'm not saying that it's not perfect, because it is perfect, but we're also parts of it. And we have a responsibility to help each other and to help do whatever we can to evolve ourselves and to steward the land and steward the universe and steward the energies here and things like that. And we do that through creativity, and we do that through ingenuity. So I don't think that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that all technology is bad. That's not where I'm
No, I
going
know,
with it. But what I'm saying is, depending on how it's being guided or how it's being ruled or used, it can be extremely dangerous, especially if it's not combined with morality. And
mm,
and what's happening in these situations, it's not. It's all one way. Fred just said the xenomorphs are pure, unmitigated forces of nature, fearless and flawless, which is what you kind of see in this film. Like, I have that clip somewhere. I'm not going to bring it up because it'd take too long. But the one in the first movie, when the head gets cut off of the synthetic being, and they plug him back in to get some information from him, and he's talking and drooling, and the white cum looking stuff's coming out of his mouth and all over his
mhm.
face. Again, another sexual innuendo. But what he says is they're amazing. I can't remember exact
Right.
words how he puts it, but he's like, they're inspiring, and that shows up in some of the other movies too. And like, I mean, if you get
Yes.
into the newer movies that have come out that sort of explain more
Covenant
of this
and
story,
yeah.
you see, like, it's this pure nature that's been like magnified and grown and perfected, right? So it's even more perfect than we are. It was even more perfect than the original engineers that
Right,
created
right, right.
the
Yeah.
humans, in theory.
Yep.
The way that story goes. So that's pretty interesting. But like, I'm not saying we shouldn't use technology, because
Mhm. No, we're using it
technology is
now.
our ability that we're given freely, right? That we have to use our hands, to use our mind, to combine them together. Even a pencil, even a paper is a technology, right? Even the idea of government is a technology. It's a way to rule,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so there's nothing inherently wrong with inventing or using our ingenuity. But if it's done without the morality and the first principles, it's extremely dangerous. And
Yep.
it can lead us down a path of being owned, ruled, and ending up inside of these chambers, where we are just fodder for machines, and the machines
Right.
control us instead of us controlling them.
It's the Terminator world, man. They have them. They got the Terminators out there. Don't worry. you know, and yeah, I think you said that very well. I think it's really important to distinguish those things. And since we're living in a world that's so dominated by, the technocratic elites and just everybody's so materialistic, it is important to put emphasis to get us back into nature. So we need to understand that if we don't understand the lesser mysteries, the mysteries that are the most important, which are things like principles, getting back to principles, to true principles, then we don't have the, I don't want to say we don't have the right, but we don't have the ability or capability to handle the technology that we have properly. We just don't, not yet. The whole species doesn't. We're not there yet. Now, me and you and some other people who understand principles, yeah, the few, maybe thousands of people, tens of thousands of people that have principles or whatever in this world. Maybe there's more. I don't know. Maybe that's really shortchanging the how many people are actually principled, but I don't really see that many, honestly. But we can handle technology, but I don't think a lot of people can, obviously. Um, so it can be really
Fred said, even in their death, they're extremely dangerous. Something I don't think we've talked about yet is the acid blood that comes out of the aliens when they're wounded. And, like I was talking about with sexual abuse or trauma from people doing evil things, it gets worse. Even like he says, even when the alien's dead, even when the evil has been vanquished in theory, it still leaves marks. It still leaves damage. Like when they killed the alien a couple times, the acid splash on him, and it's like keeps burning. It's not
right.
over yet. And so I've been noticing this in my own personal life and the personal life of other people. Like even if we do a lot of our self work, even if we go through this life, we still get triggered by traumas of the way we've been indoctrinated and grown in
Hmm.
this technological system, in this going away from nature, in this destruction of freedom style of living. That even if we start to recognize truth, we still have a lot of trauma to work through, and we still have a lot of scars. So
Absolutely.
sorry to jump in there when you were talking, but I just got that
Oh
was a
no,
good
you
comrade,
have
and
a lot
I wanted to
a
say
lot of
that.
good things to say. You're bringing up great points. And Doug
It's good to see
shared a
Doug in
link.
the chat. Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah, I know. And he shared a link to that documentary I was talking about, The Story of Film and Odyssey, which is really good.
Oh,
He's the
okay.
one who turned me on to it. And it's really, really good. I think it's like an 11-part series. Another thing I'd like to bring up is that the aspect of Sigourney Weaver, of Ripley, there's two things I want to bring up. First of all, is her first name is Ellen, right? So if you break that down in green language, it's L-N. Okay, so it's in L, and L is God, right? Or the electric energy. So she has the masculine side. So you have L and Mag. So she represents Mag, but the inner L, she has the inner L going on. She has the inner masculine going on, which she manifests. Um, and then the other thing is that she ends up what? She ends up in that big loader, that big yellow forklift loader machine to fight the alien, right?
That's so
Yeah,
sweet.
with the pincher claws. And she fights the mother queen on the ship after the queen alien rips the cyborg in half, the android in half. And it's really crazy if you look into how they did all that stuff, because the alien, the queen, is actually two guys in a suit. It's a bodysuit, so it's a big puppet, and it's two guys, and they represent, they're controlling the four arms and stuff. And the way that they set it up was just with trash bags and a couple like a bunch of like trash bags and a few other things, and it was really wild if you look
But
into the making of
right
that.
there too, there's that so many parallels in both movies. Like I said, both of them had that in the beginning, the same
Mhm.
scenes. Both of them had the machine that can run without the people, and then both of them also had the cyborg getting its head cut off or cut
Yep,
in half. Right?
cut in half. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like they keep bringing up these same things, and that's always when you look into anything about alchemy, when you see something like that, somebody's trying to make you think about something, right?
Right.
They didn't just do that by accident. He's pointing out the theme here, like he's cutting in half the artificial being, right?
Yep.
Or cutting its head off. You know,
Yep. It's
it's a
almost like
pretty
nature
interesting
too.
symbol, right?
Fred said that they're kind of, if you look at it allegorically as well, you could look at the aliens as an aspect of nature because they're just instinctively doing their things. You could look at it exoterically that way, and then it's nature reclaiming itself. It's nature, it's natural law. You can look at the aliens as natural law and the consequences of natural law. It's like Godzilla kind of represents the consequences of us going too far astray from morality. you know
Every
and
time you screw up too bad, this big
yeah,
monster comes out of the sea and starts blowing
yeah,
fire on
it's
everybody. Again, the
original
fire,
sin.
which is part of alchemy, you have to burn it down to nothing, down to ashes, to
Right.
start over again, and
That
the
was the
resurrection thing
original.
pops in, right?
Ash was the original.
Ash, that was the guy. You're right. Damn,
His name,
another one.
Ash. Okay.
Yep, yep.
And but what I wanted to say about the forklift thing is that, that's the proper use of technology there, and then in Avatar, you see it being used improperly by the corporate entities that are trying to take out the natives. So they have these big machine mechanisms that are coming in and, trying to destroy the I can't remember what they're called, but the blue,
Wholesale destruction of nature, and then even the
yeah,
one tree, which is like
the one
they're
tree. Yep.
communicating with the one tree. Here I am with my tree of life.
I
That's
know.
exactly what I'm symbolizing. And that's exactly what the symbology is in the movie. That we're all connected, right? Because they could connect to that tree, and it would give them
Yep.
knowledge. They could communicate with each other, and that's
Such a
exactly what they wanted to bring the machines in to destroy, because they want to cut the roots that we
Yep.
have to each other, cut the roots we have to our spirit, and cut the roots we have to all understanding. So, which is the umbilical cord to
Right.
natural law. And that's exactly the way we've been fragmented and cut down with this trauma and all these machine type ways of thinking, that we can
Right.
make laws and mechanically tell each other what to do in every situation without actually thinking of it and observing the situation in its own merit.
That's right. And I just kind of want to re-emphasize the Freemasonic symbolism here, because this whole movie to me represents the middle chamber, because it's about the dark aspects. You have to go within yourself. You got to go through the heart of darkness to find the light. And that's what our protagonist does in this movie, is that she goes through the heart of darkness. She conquers her fear, and she starts to manifest love, the love frequency, by righteous aggression and righteous indignation, right? And she uses anger properly, and she becomes an awakened being, and then she saves the progeny, because this is about protecting progeny as well. She's protecting progeny, the child, the
Well, the
innocent.
future of all humanity. If this
Right.
bug gets back to Earth, she knows it can just take over the whole planet. And
The whole
so she's
planet,
making this
absolutely.
sacrifice in the first movie, just like you said with the Jesus in the third one. But even in the first one, she's making a bit of a sacrifice. She says, "I need to take care of this thing out here right now." And in the second one, they kind of have to make that same decision, where if they leave on the escape pod from the main ship, they really don't know if they can ever get back to Earth. We're just going to be floating in space. They kind of realize this, but she's like, we got to take care of this thing. We got to
Yeah.
destroy it. And it's like, so it's even at the cost of my own life, I'm going to make sure it doesn't get down there and take out the next generation of people or the whole planet, by all that means, besides just protecting Newt, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is, and that's kind of what I mean by progeny too, is just, all of the innocent creatures that are going to be harmed by this evil. And if we just, add the image of government over top of the alien here, and see that that's how government works, is just like this alien creature works. That's exactly what it does. Its highest ambition is to make sure that its self survives. That's what its ambition is survival, no matter what. So no matter what it has to do, no matter how ruthless, how cruel, how cold, it's going to make sure that it continues to survive by impregnating these, dogmatic ideologies into other beings. And yeah, so I think
Did
that's a
I
really
notice last time the word alien is a lie in?
right, a lie, and yeah, you brought
A
that
lie.
up.
I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah, you did, and it was really good.
How
That
much
one,
more do you go ahead?
I didn't catch that one. I'll look over my notes real quick. I think we pretty much covered
How
everything that
much?
I
Yeah, I
had.
was curious how much more notes you had, because I have one more clip I'd like to play, and we can chat more longer if you want. But I was thinking, maybe we close it up in the next five
Yeah,
ten minutes here,
yeah, that's
unless you
good.
got a lot more to talk about, in which I'll keep going. Because I love the talk. It's just super stimulating. I can tell everybody in the chat's enjoying it too.
Right,
We're
right, I
getting a
know.
lot of good comments, and like Fred was just saying about these eggs. I mean, you mentioned a lot about the eggs last time, and the way they open, and the way they're all sticky. Again, with the sticky stuff, that's kind of a sexual
Mm,
connotation, and the eggs are dormant, and that's kind of what Fred was alluding to there. That the eggs are just waiting for the moment. It's kind of like evil. Like, if we don't mess with it, if we don't steal, nothing really shitty has to happen. But it's
right,
always there. It's always there under the surface. And as soon as someone gets in there and starts poking around, and it's like the first person that decides, hey, I'm going to get one up on my neighbor by telling this lie and telling them there's no water so I can have all the water in myself. That's what opens the door. The egg opens, and here comes the evil. And then from
right.
there, it's just going to repeat, and it's going to, do more and more damage. So
I will say one thing here. Let me find it. I know it's in here. You were
Here, I'll
talking
play
about
this. I'll play this last clip, and then I'll give you a minute to put that
there it
together.
is. Okay, I got it.
Oh, you want to say that first?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna make this big screen. I like this clip a lot. Turn up. This is Hudson's last scene, right?
What do you mean they cut the
Yep,
power?
yep,
How could they cut the power, man? They're animals.
I want you two with
Yeah,
trackers to
over-
motherfucker! Come on! Come on! Let me get it, baby! Come on! Get off me! Come on! Come on! Come on, you bastard! Come on, you two! Oh, you want some of this? Fuck you! Ah! Fuck you!
What do
Yeah,
you
that's
mean they cut the power? That's pretty important. What do you mean they're animals? What do you mean they cut the power? Right.
yeah,
So these animals are outsmarting the humans. They had set up this perimeter. They set up the automatic machine gun. They sealed
yep,
all the doors, and somehow they didn't realize that aliens could get right above them in the little crawl space. And not only that, but the aliens cut the power. How the hell do aliens cut the power? They're animals. It's like, again, this
right,
juxtaposition between, people try to say we're animals, that there's nothing difference between humans and animals. That's the same kind of psychology of people that think that, oh, we're going to change the world with technology. And he was supposed to be the one. He was going around the ship saying, look, we got guns, we got pulse rifles, we got grenades, we got knives. But then he
right,
gets
right. Yep,
destroyed. And in the moment of trauma, he's just losing his shit. He's emotionally again, he's the symbol of somebody who's been so traumatized that he's lost his emotional balance over and over in the movie. And the little girl can do better than Hudson, and eventually you see him go out in his glorious finale, which I
right.
love that scene. But
Yeah, it
what
is
a great
good.
actor.
And I love the cinematography there too, because they use the red hue to represent
Oh
the
yeah,
bloodshed that's going on there, and it gives you that tension that you need because it's really
right.
dark and you can't really see the aliens coming in, because cutting the power is a great way of being able to hide the flaws of the alien costumes, because in this movie they had to bring up like they had to make all kinds of alien puppets, whereas the first movie they only had to make one. This one they had to make tons of them. And the more that you can cover that up in cinema, the easier it is to be able to make these scenes look more gruesome and more realistic and really get through to your subconscious and really bring out those emotions from you. But we see this a lot in movies. We see that red hue being used a lot to bring out tension and to bring out that aggression and that terror, to bring that terror out of us. So cinema expression is really interesting. I wanted to say the guy who replaced Michael Biehn, I had brought that up earlier, which is James Remar, and he was actually in the Warriors movie. Doug actually pointed that out. I don't know if you ever seen The Warriors, but he was in The Warriors, which was a really, really good movie. And then you brought up the hair stuff, and I wanted to mention the notes that I have here. The haircuts symbolize the masculine and the feminine. Long hair represents the feminine energy, and the short hair represents the masculine, obviously. But if you look at Ripley's hair, it's halfway. It's in between.
Mm.
It's not completely buzz cut and it's not completely long. So it represents the balance of the two that she has going on. And then if you look at Newt, she has the long hair. She has the longer blondish hair.
She's but
Dirty.
pure. She's a
Yeah.
purity and innocence.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's great symbolism throughout this. And, James Cameron did an amazing job. He
It's
took
all
over.
very thoughtful. It's
Yeah.
so thought out. And then the more I watch it, the more I see just like, wow, he put all these little details. Like I said, just one little screen pan, and you see two or three things that were purposefully put into that scene.
hmm Yeah, I'll bring up one more thing here, which is, and this is more to do with cinema expression and just the way that our psychology understands these things. It's like techniques that he used were like cutting the sound out at the end. He cut the sound out when she faced the queen, and what it did was give a more authentic thrill for the viewer. It brings out more expression of our own emotions and our own terror when you have like no sound after you've had a lot of sound going on. So it's a shock to our system. It's a shock to our minds and to our emotions, and then it starts to build up, and he uses sound to emphasize certain things. And what I mean by that is the musical score. He uses the musical score very precisely, and then it happens again when she's fighting the queen on the ship, and she's about to throw the queen down into the airlock and vent the queen out, where the sound just cuts out and all you can hear is the hiss of the alien, you know, just like down in the caverns or the hive, where you hear all the hissing of the steam from the mechanized machines, you know, going on, which is mimicking the hiss of the alien. So it's meant to bring out this terror from us because we feel like the aliens are anywhere, and they're like chameleons, you know, they blend into the whole hive, so you don't even know where they're at. So they have this chameleon design that H.R. Giger kind of, you know, brought up, which I brought up in the first part of this, you know, in part one that we
To
did.
me, that really symbolizes too that this evil stuff we're talking about. Like, I spend a lot of time on my podcast trying to define evil for people in a way that can be understood. It's confused.
Yeah,
It's totally like evil in our society is totally disguised, like you're saying, in the walls,
that's right.
because like the very structures that we trust, our courts, our schools,
Right.
our justice system, there, our political system, inside of all these things are is embedded with evil. It is evil because it's all based on control of people through coercion and stealing. And so
That's
this is the perfect symbol, is this natural kind of supposedly nature thing, but it's got this weird mechanical aspect to it because it's been engineered, and it's like evil all around you. You never know where it's going to pop out, and you can't even see it. You can't even tell you're inside of the evil because it
that's
just
right.
looks like the walls, right?
A- And then the other thing I would say is that you can only know the extent of good if you can understand the evil from within yourself. You know, because we all have these seeds of evil within us. So we have to be able to understand the potential that every being has, which is that they can all become a psychopath. They can all become a sociopath. They can all commit the same acts of evil that any other being can as a human being. You know, when none of us want to admit that because we all want to pretend that we're all so perfect. But you get put into a certain situation and you watch a really good soul go from, you know, a moral being. And then the next thing you know, they flip and then they're doing the most evil deeds. So, it's really easy to slip into that, you know? So we all have
And,
the potential to commit evil deeds. And the better that you know this, the better you know yourself, the less likely that those things will manifest.
and like, Mark Passio has pointed out with, the inner psychopath, there's also this part of ourself that we can learn to use as a tool in a situation of emergency, like where, Hudson's going crazy, like, bulk you too, just completely losing it, and he's not able to be self-aware, where we can use that kind of inner psychopathic part of ourselves that can shut off all the emotions and the emotional reactions in order to deal with a situation that's happening in the moment. Like if you've trained, in self-defense, and then the one moment comes where someone's about to hurt a child or someone innocent's about to get hurt, take your life, and then you shut off your emotions and you turn into the kind of psychopathic part of yourself that's like, I don't care about emotions right now. Right now it's about survival, and you're able
Right.
to do what needs to be done. It's just like we were talking about the technology. It's not evil in and of itself. It's evil because of the way it's employed. You don't want to be psychopathic most of the time at all. That's for that one situation when you're surrounded with evil and you have to act. And
Right.
it's not the time for emotions, it's the time for action.
Yep. I agree. I definitely agree. I think that's where we should end it, man. I think we got Fred jumping off. That was a really good show. This has been a good one. I'm glad
Yeah,
we got to do this. This has been
fantastic,
excellent.
man. And
Excellent, man.
I think it was good
You
we waited because we just had more ideas and more stuff to talk about.
right.
And
Yeah, no doubt.
thanks so much, Brandon, for making this such a great show. I think I'll close us out with one last clip that it's something we kind of talked about from the first Alien movie. I'll play that and then do the outro. But anything you wanted to say before we close up?
No, man, just thanking you for being patient with the fluctuation of the schedule. And I mean, this has just been an excellent show, and I hope that I can come back on and do some more content with you in the future, man.
Oh, absolutely. We'll work together more in the future. We're teammates and brothers for the same battle. We're warriors. We're soldiers. We're fighting this battle for truth and for freedom. And I don't think either of us is going to be giving up,
No
even down
way.
to the last.
We better
20
not.
aliens around us, I'm still
There's
going to
ass,
be
man.
fighting.
We'll have to be pulling each other, kind of like Ripley does. She grabs Hicks and carries him out, like, you're not getting stuck here, motherfucker.
Absolutely. Right. To our last breath,
Yep.
and even beyond. Yeah. Appreciate it much, Brandon. Brandon Martin, check out his website, seedtruth.com. And he's on the One Great Work Network. You can check him out there. And he's all over the place on the other podcasts. And
Yeah, the Cubbyhole podcast, and
Cubby
I'm doing
Hole.
a lot of interviews as well. So, but it's all
Right
on
on,
the
Brandon.
seedtruth.com. So let's see this clip, man. What you
All
got?
right, last clip, and then we'll cut out here. If you want to make a comment after, I get it, because this is a good one too. This is one I was talking about.
It's been protecting it right along. Parker, will you plug it in? I don't know what. Because he may know how to kill it. Ash, can you hear me? Ash!
Yes, I can hear you.
What was your special order?
You read it. I thought it was clear.
What was it?
Bring back life form. Priority 1. All other priorities rescinded.
The corporate agenda.
Yeah.
Damn company. What about
Damn
our
company.
son of a bitch? I repeat, all other priorities are rescinded.
How do we kill it, Ash? There's gotta be a way of killing it. How? How do we do it?
You can't. It's bullshit. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility.
You admire it.
You admire it, right? The
Yeah.
perfect organism.
I admire its purity.
Yeah, it's like people who worship government, man.
Exactly.
Unclouded.
It's kind of quiet and hard to sit, but he said, you have my sympathies.
Or delusions of morality.
Yep.
That's pretty much it. And then he basically says, they have no chance of survival. So,
Yep.
it's what they want us to think, that, that we can't survive, that evil can't be defeated. And that's what people think, that there is no way to end evil, but there is. All we have to do is stop doing evil things,
Right. It's actually
It's
really
really that easy,
Yeah. Yeah. And it starts on the individual level, So
Absolutely.
that's what it takes, is individualization and individual awakening, and dedicating yourself to your principles and becoming very disciplined, and using some wu wei too. You got to use the wu wei, right? You know what that is. I heard you talk.
What do you mean? What's the Wu Wei?
It's a Chinese kind of art style. It means the path, and it's kind of what Bruce Lee talked about, which was like being like water. You know,
Mm,
you
right.
can be as gentle as a current, but if that current gets strong enough, it can hit like a rock, or it can erode things over a long period of time. So you have to be like water, you know. So we have to be able to fit and be flexible, but also be hard, and be able to fight and have a force that people can't reckon with. So has to be both. We have to have a balance between it. So it's called Wu Wei. I thought you mentioned it. Maybe somebody else mentioned it on one of the other podcasts. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's cool.
good.
Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that. And it's like that's ultimately what we're getting at here, folks, is that it's up to each of us to deal with our own internal struggles and continue to be a better person every day and work towards doing what's right. and working towards, the survival of humanity and the survival of our race, because that's really what shit's coming down to here, and that's going to be us getting in alignment with first principles, getting in alignment with good, the generative principle, and applying our time and energy towards growing things and protecting life and protecting innocence, and really starting to not accept this technological agenda to destroy our natural connection. So,
Absolutely. Well said.
all right, Brandon, much appreciated. Let's actually end this awesome show, and we'll be in touch. And
All
thank you,
right.
folks, for coming and listening, and everyone who commented. Much appreciated. I'll be back next Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, with End Evil Podcast. I intend to keep on going now. Now I got a lot of stuff saved up to show everybody, so we'll be back with more next week. And have a good night. Thanks so much. Evil's the destruction of freedom. Can I find my outro now? Oh, well, I'll just go with the music. All right, Brandon. See you around, brother.
Yep. Later, brother.